Good afternoon, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network, actually a special edition of the Sales Pro Network. For those of you who aren't members or don't know me, I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations all over the world to help them get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network on Facebook to be a place to elevate the profession of sales and where you can come and learn, network, and hear from incredibly wonderful guests who can add value to the profession of sales. Now, normally we do these every Friday morning at 10 a.m., but today's guest is so flippin' popular and so in demand that it was impossible to get him for the next 3 years. So we're talking today to someone who I very much admire and respect, and I'm going to give you his name in a second. You can see it on the screen. But as part of what I do, I teach people how to sell more effectively. I teach managers how to manage more effectively, and I teach them how to prospect more effectively. But the gentleman who I'm about to introduce you to, he's my go-to guy for prospecting. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to, if you're young, you can call him Jay Bay, or if you're an old fart like me, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jason Bay. Good afternoon, Jason.
What's up, Jeff? Good to jam with you again, man.
Man, I'm really excited because I follow you carefully on LinkedIn. As far as I'm concerned, every word out of your mouth is a pearl of wisdom. And even though I think I'm about twice your age at least, I really admire everything you say. You're on the pulse of what's happening today in today's economy and today's selling. So I'm going to jump right into questions if that's okay with you, Jason.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So if you're watching us live, please do say hello in the comments. If you're on Facebook and you have not connected your account to StreamYard, we're not going to know who you are. So please put your name in there too. It'll just say Facebook user. And if you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in. So Jason, your company is Blissful Prospecting, which I think is a beautiful name. What is Blissful Prospecting? How is that different from regular prospecting?
Well, I think that, if anyone's come up in sales being taught how to prospect, usually that involved, hey Jeff, here's a list, get after it. Good luck. And I think prospecting has always been something that you do, and it's never been something that is taught in terms of a formal process, mindset, none of that kind of stuff. There's lots of stuff out there on how to do a good sales call and demo call if you sell software, that sort of thing. So when we started Blissful Prospecting, I started with that in mind, that, why do people hate prospecting so much? Why do they hate it so much? One, the failure rate is really high. According to Clearbit, you got less than a 1% chance of getting a positive reply to a cold email. And according to Gong, it's 1.48% chance of getting a positive outcome from a cold call. So no wonder why people hate it. The success rate is so low. So really what I try to do is incorporate frameworks. So there's three kind of areas that if we do these things really well, which I'm sure we'll get to, outbound becomes more blissful, I guess you could call it, right? One is identify. So if I know really clearly who my ideal client profile is, my personas, I know who I'm going after, I have a reason for reaching out, that's going to make my life a lot easier. Two, engage. If I know how to start conversations talking about the other person and their business versus starting with my product, I'm going to get a lot of less people hanging up on me and a lot less rejection. And then lastly, create. If I know how to turn those conversations into opportunities and meetings and know how to do a little bit of objection handling and that sort of stuff, my life's going to get a lot easier. So that's kind of the three parts of the framework that I think about when it comes to blissful prospecting.
Yeah, I think that most salespeople, myself included, when they think of prospecting, they think of the word rejection, because you just gave the statistics. We tend to get massively rejected, and it's not blissful. So I just love the sound of the name. But tell me this, where is the smart money in prospecting these days? Is it cold calling, which, by the way, everybody who I speak to says cold calling never worked. It never will work. It doesn't work now. It didn't work when the dinosaurs were around. It's not going to work when black holes swallow up the sun. So is it email? Is it phone calls? Where is it something else? What should we be doing in order to be effective today?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I kind of hear behind that is, what's the best contact strategy? What is the best way to get a hold of people? All of the data, InsideSales.com, they have a whole cadence platform. They have millions and millions and millions of data points of people running cadences. And a cadence, for those of you that don't know, cadence, sequence, you can use those terms interchangeably. It's a sequence of activities, phone, email, social, whatever it may be, a set of activities that I pursue a prospect with. So all of the data, you have a times higher likelihood of getting in contact with a prospect if you use 3 channels instead of 1. So it's really not about one or the other. It's about phone plus email plus social. I don't know what the prospect's preferred communication channel is. That's important. 2, some of us have natural strengths and weaknesses when it comes to communicating, verbally or written, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to play off of that. And I think the other thing to, really kind of take in consideration too is you mentioned cold call and is that dead or not? I think my definition of a cold call is if I call you, Jeff, and you weren't expecting me to call you. I could have done 100 hours of research. I could have sent you 20 emails. I could have mailed you my book, whatever it is. If you pick up the phone and I called you and you didn't ask me to do that, that's a cold call in my book. So you can call it warm calling if you want, whatever. Now, the type of calling that is dying very quickly and has been on its way out is the smile and dial. I'm just going to load thousands of numbers up into a dialer and just call people and not research them beforehand. That's going out of fashion. That's sort of been out of fashion for a while. So if I'm purposeful and have a reason for reaching out, and I'm reaching out to someone that really is pretty close to my ideal client profile, and I've worked with other people like them, I don't know what to say to those people that think it's dead, because there are entire organizations, the biggest organizations on the planet, do tons of outbound. They do a ton of inbound too, but they successfully do a ton of outbound.
Yeah, I certainly much rather that I'm only speaking with people who are raising their hand and saying, "Hey, Jeff, yeah, I'm interested in some sales coaching or some sales." But at some point, most organizations do have to do some outbound. And for years, I've been teaching exactly what you're saying, which is you need a blended approach because you don't know what's going to work with that particular prospect. So I always advise do some social, do some LinkedIn, do some cold calling, do some emailing, and keep experimenting and seeing what's working for you. By the way, good afternoon. Well, I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly. Asma Nasseri, good morning, good afternoon. Munish, I'm going to murder your last name, Sawney. And I spoke to her yesterday. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Joanne Paraya. Thank you for joining us today. So you just mentioned something before a dialer. So I can tell you that when I get a call and there's that few second delay, I know what's happening. It's a predictive dialer that's just waiting to connect me to somebody. I personally will wait to talk to them because I love hearing every pitch. But do you advise companies to use something like a predictive dialer? I find it very annoying.
Yeah, I think that there's different ways that you can use one. So I come up in call centers. So the very first inside sales position I had was, creating a call center from scratch. So we looked at the different type of dialer options, and we used a ton of predictive dialing. I think the key is knowing where this fits into your tool belt. You shouldn't have a strategy that's 100%, I'm going to put a bunch of numbers in there. We're just going to grind through all of them. The place for a predictive dialer or an auto dialer is who are all of the contacts that we've tried to get a hold of that we just can't. And let's throw thousands of those people. Let's throw those into a dialer and let's see what we can make happen. You're really just trying to squeeze as much juice out of your target market as possible. In terms of the delay, from a technical standpoint, that shouldn't happen if they kind of crank down the velocity a little bit. The way a predictive dialer works, for those of you watching that may not be aware, it'll put multiple lines dialing at the same time. So the reason why the rep doesn't, all they hear is a click and they don't hear the person say hello, is that if I connect with Jeff, it hangs up the other 8 lines that are dialing, and it just takes a half a second or so. So they probably have too many open lines if the delay is that obvious, but there is a time and place for sure. I'm not really a huge advocate of making that the only way. It is a way, and a way that I recommend.
Yeah, a half a second wouldn't be bad, but I find it's usually more like 2 or 3. And here's the thing that gets me.
Yeah.
I answer the phone every single time. Hi, this is Jeff. And then they get on and they say, "Hi, can I speak to Jeff, please?" Well, I just said I'm Jeff. Stop annoying. It's like when you have to put in your PIN code for your credit card number, and then the representative for your bank gets on and says, "Can you give me your credit card number?" Why did I type it in? Just annoying.
Yeah.
What's the reply method of cold email prospect? I was fascinated by that.
Yeah. So reply method is it's essentially a framework that I came up with for sending cold emails. So when I started Blissful Prospecting with my wife Sarah, we were a done for you agency that would send email sequences on behalf of clients and book meetings for them. So during the course of that, I just got experience writing hundreds of sequences for clients over and over and over again. And it would take me 8 hours to write an email sequence, a really long time. So I started to pick out, what are the kind of key principles in this message? What are those things that we need to make sure that it includes, and not necessarily in any particular order. So the reply is an acronym. So when we're looking at an email, and again, the most important thing here is that, remember, an email is just a part of your sequence or cadence. I'm not going to write one email. Okay. It's about sending 4, 5, 6 emails. So the way I'm going to design the email and the cadence is based around the persona that I'm reaching out to and what their priorities are. Okay. So I have a client right now that sells a customer experience solution into really large, some of the biggest support centers in the entire North America, at least. I don't know if the world or not. So what these people care about are, 1, reducing cost to serve, and then 2, reducing agent attrition. So those are the 2 big things. I'm going to write an email just around one of those topics, not both, one of those topics. So that email needs to include 5 things. And again, it doesn't have to be in this order. The R is for relevant results. So I don't know about you, Jeff. One of the things that I see in emails, because I get a decent number of them, not as many as the executives that a lot of my clients prospect into, but they'll say, yeah, we've done work with Google and Amazon. I'm like, okay, I'm not Google or Amazon. I mean, that's really great that you've done that, but like, that's not my business, So when someone says we help companies like yours versus, hey, we work with coaches, or we work with consultants, or we work with trainers, did give away that this is not relevant to me. So I need to, if I'm going to use social proof, recommend and drop companies that are similar in function. I need to talk about outcomes, not my product's features or benefits. So in the case of my client, if I'm helping with agent attrition, I'm not going to say we're an employee experience platform. I'm going to say, hey, when I talk to call center VPs like yourself, one thing that's a really big focus is reducing agent attrition, particularly the amount of time that it takes for them to handle, customer requests, right? So relevant results. E is for empathy. So I need to talk about, and I already kind of did this already, I need to talk about things that are priorities or problems, and ideally both of those things together in the email. So I need to talk about what people like you are trying to accomplish. And I gave you an example of that. And then a problem that gets in the way. So one of the problems for my client is with the call center attrition. Oftentimes they try to fix the problem by just increasing the wages, and they end up paying people more money, and just as much people fall out. So they just end up costing a bunch of money. P is for personalization. So the acid test here is, if this email looks like it was part of a sequence and doesn't feel like it was for me, it's not personalized enough. So if I can copy and paste the same email and send it to Jason, and then just change out the first name and send it to Jeff, it's not personalized enough. L is for laser focus. So the average person's reading speed, what do you think it is actually, Jeff? What do you think the average reading speed is of
I don't know.
an American adult? What was that?
600 words a minute?
Ooh, that's fast. It's about 300 words a minute. So, and I even think 300 is kind of fast. So it's 300 words a minute. The average person, according to Statista, they analyzed like 8 billion emails in 2021. They spend about 11 seconds on an email if they open it. So when you kind of do the math on there's a sweet spot of word count that's around 50 to 100 words. And that might actually sound like a lot to some people. It's like 4 or 5 really short, concise sentences. So laser focus, I need to keep it under 100 words. 50 to 100 is kind of the sweet spot. And one ask. I'm not going to say, Jeff, here's a case study. Check out this piece of content. Oh, by the way, here's my Calendly link. Oh, by the way, are you flexible to chat about this? No, one ask per email. And then the Y is you-oriented. So you-oriented is, am I making the prospect the hero? I always like to say, I don't know if you saw the new Batman or not, Jeff, but I always like to say people, they want to be Batman. Your prospect wants to be Batman. They don't want to be Alfred, right? So how am I talking about how I can make them better, help them with what they care about, versus saying we're so cool because we work with all these companies? So that's, we could spend a whole hour talking about email. I try to do that as in concise a way as possible, but that's kind of the framework and the checklist of things that we would want to look for in an email.
Exactly what I was looking for. And I actually know the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask you anyways. In an email or a phone script, how do you feel about the word I?
Yeah, I think that I think we can overdo it. So the thing that I look at is I want to blend. I just want to make sure that it's not all eyes. 50-50, I'm okay with. We could say you, we could say I, but more importantly, the focus of what I'm talking about needs to be about you. So, and in doing that, I'm going to say you and your more than I'm going to say I. I'm okay with a few of those. I was reaching out because, the reason for my call is I noticed this, but I need to make the content of that sentence about you. That's really the more important part. But you definitely, a challenge for you would be to start an email with you or your. See how that changes the email. So instead of I saw this, your podcast stuck out to me. Not I listened to your podcast and this, your episode with Jason stuck out to me because of this reason. Right? There's a very big difference in those two things. One feels like it's talking to me and one feels like it's talking at me.
Yeah. My thing is always that the prospect doesn't care about you. So when you start out, I want to speak with you, I want to get an appointment. Who cares? Show me how you're going to help me and get to that
Yeah.
point quickly. Because I don't think I would have guessed that 50 words is the amount. I do always recommend to people, you got to keep it brief. I always talk about above the fold. If they have to page down to read your email, you're probably going on too long. Because
Yeah.
I do get a lot of emails every day. I might not be the type of executives that everybody's selling to, but I get reached out to constantly via both LinkedIn and email. It's all, I want to do this, I want to do that. I don't care what you want. I care about me. You're going to show me how I can get more appointments or close more business, make more money. I'm interested in hearing about that, but it can't be all I oriented. And so many people, it's all about them. It doesn't make any sense. By the way, if you guys have any questions for Jason, please put them in the comments and I will share them. Jason, what are unsure tones? I actually hadn't heard that phrase before, and I'm curious.
Yeah, so a guy, Will Allred, he's a co-founder at a company called Lavender. So Lavender is a tool that they send about 2 million salespeople send about 2 million emails through their platform on a monthly basis. So one of the things Will shared with me on a podcast I thought was really fascinating is he said one thing that we found is when there are unsure tones in emails, they tend to have a 3 to 4 times higher likelihood of getting a response. I was like, well, what are unsure tones? Well, he's like, if you find something about a person, just say that you're not really sure if that is correct or not. I already teach this on the phone, so if I was reaching out to Jeff, I might say, hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I picked up that you and Jason talked about XYZ in the podcast, you know? Or if I reach out to a company, so the client example I used earlier, let's say they're hiring in their call center. So instead of saying, I see that you're hiring 18 people in your call center, hey, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like you're hiring 18 people in your call center. I have a hunch for why this works. And again, I already taught it over the phone. I never really thought to translate it to email. My hunch is that most people, including myself, my written voice is not as dialed in as my like audible voices, I guess you call it. So those two are not as close in sync because I don't have as much practice in my life writing as I do speaking. You know what I mean? So I suspect that the way most people write, because I look at a lot of these emails, it feels like I am pointing out a problem to someone that's like, hey, Jeff, did you notice that you could work out, man? It's like, what? It's like they're pointing out problems that feel like someone saying that. Hey, you're going to eat that? That's unhealthy for you, right? You know what I mean? It's just like, that's what it feels like. That's what the tone sounds like, you know? So those unsure tones, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be mistaken. It looks like, or I'm not sure if I saw this correctly, or any of that type of stuff. Or, hey, I'm guessing this might mean, all of that stuff actually works pretty well in
Yeah,
your
I
emails.
love that. I've actually been teaching something similar with regards to sales. Like, I'm not a big fan of saying, I know I can help you do this, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm really good at what I do, but I don't know if I can help anybody until I have a conversation with them,
Yep.
find out what they're doing now, and if there's any area for improvement. So I guess I was using unsure tones also. Good. Let's see. Craig Atkins, who happens to be a terrific salesperson who I know personally, says, so glad to be here. Appreciate all this. You can easily spend an hour on email sequences.
Yep.
Val down in Florida says, really digging this conversation. She has a question for you. How long do you wait before following up after you email or send a proposal?
Ooh, so those are two very different situations. So an email, I'm going to assume you mean prospecting email. So I'm trying to get the first meeting with someone. So the way the sequence, I already kind of outlined the number of steps, but I have a framework called Keep It Simple Sequencing. Basically, there's some principles at play here that InsideSales.com, SalesLoft, Outreach, all the sales engagement platforms will tell you something along these lines. When you reach out to someone, it needs to have 12 to 15 touches. 6 of those need to be email. 6 of them need to be phone calls. 3 of them need to be social, and it needs to take place over a 3 to 5 week period. So if you kind of follow those principles and work around it, you're in a really good starting point. So each week follows this pattern. On a Tuesday, let's say, I'm going to send an email, make a phone call, do a social touch. I'm going to do a triple touch. I'm going to try to do all of those within the same hour if I can. And then I'm going to wait 2 days. Thursday, email, phone, double tap. That's it. 5 touches a week. So your email should have 2 business days. Well, I guess a business day between them. So if I'm going to send it on a Tuesday, I'm going to send it 48 hours later on a Thursday. That's how much I want to space my emails out. And then you can adjust based on what works from there, or if there's specific things in your industry or whatever it might be.
Got it. And Val, if you're asking about after you send somebody a proposal, well, Jason, why don't I get your opinion on that?
Yeah, I'm very much of the opinion that when I send a proposal to someone, it's because we've already decided that we're going to work together. So ideally, the way I do it is going to be different than some other people. I won't send a proposal until someone says, yes, let's work together. So I don't have to follow up afterwards. I'm just not going to send it out. So the other thing that you can do, though, is you want to be on the phone going over the proposal with the person, ideally.
Bingo.
Right? So hopefully we can avoid that follow-up. Now, I get if I'm doing a larger deal, the person signing, I may not have ever gotten a chance to interact with the person that signs this. But I better have a next step on the calendar with my champion. So, hey, I'm going to send it over to Bob. He's supposed to sign tomorrow. Awesome. Well, Jeff, just in case for some reason you guys have questions, let's get a call set up on Monday so that we can chat, and then we can cancel it if we don't need to talk. So you want to avoid following up through email with that kind of thing.
I was going to give Val the answer, but I figured I'd give you the chance to do it first. And of course, on target, Val, don't send a proposal. First of all, you're not in the proposal business. You're in the sales business, delivering whatever it is that you're delivering. And if you're going to take the time to invest to write a proposal, which for some people takes hours or days, mine take about 20 minutes, but I don't have 20 minutes to waste. So if I'm going to deliver a proposal via email, which I hate doing, I'm not doing it unless, let's say Jason is my prospect. Jason agrees to meet with me at 10 a.m. on Tuesday to review my proposal. Jason, you're probably going to have some questions. Here's what I think we should do. I think the smart thing is let's get on a quick Zoom meeting on Tuesday at 10 a.m. We can review. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. And that way you'll have all the information you need to make an intelligent decision whenever you're ready. But just sending proposals off into the ozone, if proposals close business, we wouldn't need salespeople. Same thing if literature closed business, we wouldn't need salespeople. So never send a proposal without getting some commitment from the prospect that they're going to review that proposal with you. And here's a technique that I like to use. If you're absolutely going to send a proposal and you have not discussed pricing yet, then I would leave the last page off your proposal, send over the proposal without the pricing, which is what they really want anyways. And then you're going to review the pricing when you're speaking to them. Because if not, here's what happens. If your proposal is 20 pages, they get it, they open it up, go right to page 20. They're not reading the 19 pages of brilliance that you put before as to here's the situation I see, here's what I'm going to do, how to help you, here's my bio and all that stuff. Don't waste your time. You're not a proposal machine. Now, you did a broadcast, I think just yesterday, on the blueprint for how to book 3 times more meetings inside your target accounts. I think I speak for everybody. How do you do that? 3 times more meetings? That sounds good.
Yeah, there definitely a lot of stuff ground that we covered. The theme was around multi-threading. So multi-threading, for those of you that don't know what multi-threading is, it's the key to closing a deal. It is the key. Multi-threading, Chorus.ai did some really interesting studies, and they looked at like 18,000 B2B deals over the course of a couple months or whatever it was. And what they found is that the number of people involved, like actively involved, not just on a call, but participating in a Zoom call or a Teams call, was 1.55 on average for the deals that were won, and it was around 1 for the deals that were lost. So what that means is that more people are participating in the sales process on deals that get closed. So how does that relate to prospecting? Well, where people tend to stop prospecting is once they've gotten a first meeting. And you know what? If you sell something that's, SMB or smaller commercial type stuff and it's really transactional, maybe you only need to interact with like one person, two people maybe at a company. But anyone that's selling something above $50,000, there's multiple people have their hand in the cookie jar when it comes to stuff like that. So the way that you can get more of these meetings is to strategically think about who else needs to be involved at the accounts that you're working or the companies that you're going after. So I know that for me, for example, if I get on a call with a director of sales, let's say, I know that there's usually a couple managers that are going to have a lot of influence there. I know that they're going to have to get their VP bought in. And I typically, once it hits a certain threshold, for me, that's like usually anything above $25,000, $30,000. When a company is under 1,000 employees, I know that they have to get like the chief revenue officer is going to be the person controlling that budget. So that's like 3 people that I need to get on board right there. So I need to be able to figure out how to multi-thread and get meetings with some of those other folks. So an example of something I might do ahead of a meeting with a director of sales, I might reach out to a manager just to do what's called ground swelling and get some of these people on the phone. So when I come into my meeting with Jeff, Mr. Director, I can say, hey, actually already talked to a couple of your managers. And one of the things they shared with me is that their team has a lot of call reluctance right now. And they don't want to talk to the C-suite. They're more comfortable getting meetings with the director of sales. And so-and-so thinks that might actually be extending the sales cycle length. That's something that you guys are thinking about right now. Is that an initiative you guys have to reduce the sales cycle? Right. So I can come in with that. And then the other thing too is once I've had that first conversation, how can I proactively start to get other people involved? It's all about multi-threading. The bigger the deals that you land, the more you need to do this. Prospecting does not stop after the first meeting. So you got to constantly be thinking about how can I, even if I'm prospecting to get introductions, how am I getting other people involved in the sale? Gong has a lot of data. I don't know the specific stats, but around win and loss rates when a decision maker, so someone with signing authority, if they're a part of the sales process. And what do you know? Win rates go up dramatically when I can get a VP involved in my case, right? Because I don't always get to interact with these people, or a chief revenue officer if I can get them involved. So multi-threading is really where it's at. How can I get multiple meetings with individuals in the company? One other thing I'll share with you too is ahead of a meeting, I don't know, Jeff, if what the learning curve was like for you with this, but for me, it was as my business has grown, I'm selling larger deals. And what I had to learn how to do was how do you run a sales call with 4 or 5 people on it? It becomes like you having to like herd kittens and cats almost, where it's like you're running a like mini coaching call is what it felt like to me. But I think one of the big things was, do I have individual communication with everyone that's on that call? So leading up to a call, one of the things that you can do too is for the people on the call, you can send an email out to them. And let's say Jeff is the one that came through my website and scheduled a meeting. He invited 3 of his buddies on there. I can reach out to them individually through an email and say, hey, I'm available for 5 or 10 minutes if you want to chat prior. I know with these group meetings, you don't always get to share what's important to you. Is there anything that is really top of mind for you that you want to make sure to get from the call tomorrow? And here's a way you could schedule some time with me if you want to chat. Then afterwards, I'm going to do the same thing. Reach out individually. Right. That extra bit of work is what will really help your closing rates, especially if you're doing, larger commercial or enterprise, type engagements. Yeah. So that's how you get more meetings inside your accounts.
That's great. And there's a great new book on that subject that you're calling multi-threading called Echo Selling. I don't know if you read that by Steve Bookbinder, but it's all about building that groundswell and various ways to do it. Really good stuff. You said something a couple of moments ago that I want to come back to, and it's because I saw a post that you did just the other day on this, and it really blew me away. It was an eye opener, and it has to do with leaving voicemails. And the typical thing is, look, when I teach people how to leave a voicemail, the thing I almost always get is, Jeff, I never leave voicemails. There's always somebody in a class that raises their hand when I start talking about voicemails. And Jeff, I never leave voicemails. And I always ask the same question because even though I know the answer, I want to hear it from them. The question is, why don't you leave voicemails? And the answer is because nobody calls back. Well, if nobody calls back, then you have to leave a voicemail. But you have what I consider a new take on leaving voicemails. I hope you know what I'm talking about. Would you please share that with us?
Well, I was actually opening up some stats just because I have a lot of those. So Orem So Orb is a dialer that reps can use, and millions of calls get made through their system. So they're synced up with the CRMs too. Here's what they found. Because what they wanted to know was, does leaving voicemails influence, prospect engagement? And what they found is that there was a 25.8% improvement in subsequent pickup rate when SDRs left a voicemail. So that means when I leave you a voicemail, Jeff, you're 25.8% more likely to pick up the next time I call you. So it can create some awareness. The thing that we don't know is what is the listen rate on a voicemail? I don't know about you. I listen to every single voicemail that I get. It might only be the first 5 seconds, but I'm clicking and listening. And my visual voicemail, I don't know about yours, it doesn't really work that well. It doesn't always transcribe the voicemail on my iPhone. So that's important. And then there was also an 11.5% improvement in callback rate within 7 days. So what I want to think about with voicemail is callbacks are nice, but honestly, I feel like getting a callback from a voicemail is the huge ask of the prospect. That's a lot of work. Cognitive load theory tells us that the more work that is required of someone to do something, the less likely they are to do it. So instead of asking Jeff to call me back, what if I said, hey, Jeff, I saw that you're doing a bunch of hiring in your call center right now. I know agent attrition is really top of mind for a lot of the folks I talk to. No need to call me back. I sent you an email just now, and the subject line of that email is agent attrition. I put a couple ideas in there I thought you might find helpful. Again, no need to call me back. It's Jason with XYZ Company. Subject line in that email is agent attrition. Go ahead and check it out and let me know what you think. So I'm going to point the voicemail to the email. This is the way I can do those double taps that we talked about with sequencing. I'm going to do phone and email, and I'm making the channels work together.
It's brilliant. I have to tell you, when I saw that post, my gut kind of clenched, because I teach people how to leave voicemails that get calls back, except it's gone down and down and down and down over the years. Look, I'm supposed to be expert level at it, and I don't get many calls returned either. And I've been struggling with, how do I give somebody a technique that's actually going to get people to return calls? I love how you're just taking the pressure off. You're doing what I call acknowledging the obvious. Look, you're not going to call me back anyway, so why even bother asking you? And you're actually going the opposite. I don't expect you to call me back, but pointing them to an email with a specific subject line, I think it's brilliant. In fact, one of the gentlemen who's on this call, I shared that with him. I attributed it to you, and he tried it, and I think he wrote to me like an hour later. Goes, "You're not going to believe this. I did this, and it worked." So yeah, love that. This kind of goes in tune with the name of your company, Blissful Prospecting. There's no pressure. You're not trying to talk people into things. You're not trying to slam them over the head. It's really terrific. Asma says, I hope I pronounced that right. Asma. Wow, that's really effective. Yes. And Larry Weiss, who is a phone guy, says, good points on voicemail. Another point, always state your name and phone number at the very beginning of the message.
I don't know about that, actually. I would challenge that a bit. I would change it up a bit. So think about pattern interrupts. We have human beings, we have habit loops, right? Most of our habits, we don't even control. So there's some sort of cue or trigger, and that triggers some sort of behavior of ours, and there's a reward for that. So cue, we get a voicemail. What does that trigger for us to click on it? What we're trying to do is remove the surprise of what it is, right? The reward is that we no longer have to deal with this stress of not knowing, right? Well, guess the habit loop that people normally have. I listen to a voicemail, and guess what? I'm going to delete it if it says, hey, Jeff, this is Jason with Blissful Prospecting. I sound like a salesperson. So a thing that you could try, there's plenty of people that talked about this. Dude, save your name and phone for the end of the voicemail if you're going to do it. Mix it up a bit. So if you leave a prospect 3 or 4 voicemails, make each one of them different.
Got it. Asma saying, could you repeat it? Apparently she liked what you said. Could you please repeat it?
Yeah, so it would be something along. So this is one style of a voicemail. This would be the short one. I actually want to make them under 23 seconds if possible. Jeff, I noticed that you guys are hiring a ton of people in your call center right now. And one of the things that I hear from a lot of VPs of support is they're dealing with agent attrition. And I'm not sure if you're dealing with that or not, but I had some ideas for you based on the work that we're doing with XYZ companies. I sent you an email, and the subject line's agent attrition. No need for a callback. This is Jason with XYZ Company. Again, the subject line of that email is agent attrition.
Beautiful,
That's
just
it.
beautiful. And Craig, the gentleman who tried this, says, what's the follow-up to the voicemail email sequence in the you don't need to call me back scenario when someone doesn't reply? How do you follow up to that?
Yeah. So I'm sending 6 emails in my sequence, right? So I'm just going to keep emailing them like normal. So over those 3 weeks, each week is a priority that I email around. So with my example client, one week's worth of emails are around agent attrition. Another week's worth of emails are around reducing cost to serve. So when I leave a voicemail on a Tuesday and they don't respond after the email, I'm already planning on sending them another email 2 days later anyways. I'll give you a little secret. Okay. I call these outbound magic tricks. One magic trick that you can leverage that's super simple is don't keep sending long-winded emails to someone back to back to back to back. Send one really good email and then bump it. And don't say, did you get my email? Because that starts to sound a little needy. When you say, did you get my email? Bumping this to the top of your inbox. Ask any thoughts. Hey, Jeff, any thoughts? It's a really low friction ask. This usually has the highest reply rate of any email in the sequence. I'm asking you about your thoughts and I'm pointing it back to the previous email, right? I'm just replying to that first email, and a sales engagement tool, those will automatically do that for you. But again, I'm thinking cognitive load theory. I'm thinking user experience. When someone has to get on their phone and look at an email and you say, hey, did you get my other email? I see people do this all the time and there's no email under there. So I have to go hunt in my inbox for your, no, I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? Just think about the actual workflow that a person would go through to interact with you. Even looking at an email and deciding what to do with it has multiple steps. I see an email in my inbox. I have to decide whether or not to open it. That's one decision. I open it. I have to decide whether or not I want to read it here. Then I have to decide what I want to do with it. Then I have to decide if I want to respond, and like I have to find times in my schedule for you to, you know what I mean? It's actually a lot of work to respond to something.
Yeah,
So just
don't
keep
make me
that in
work
mind.
too hard.
Yeah, don't make the person work too hard. Okay, I got to vent about this too. One thing I cannot stand is when a prospect says, yes, let's meet, and then you make it hard for them to schedule time with you. The 3 things that you should do when you're scheduling time is you should say, hey, Jeff, excited to meet with you. You're going to give them 3 options. I put some times below, and you put 3 bullet points that could work for us. Feel free to suggest times and days that work for you if none of those work. Or feel free to click my calendar link here and find a time. I need to do all 3 of those things. If I just do the calendar, I don't know, for most people, they don't like that. They feel like, oh, yeah, it's like a power trip thing that a lot of people go through. You're making me use your calendar. So I'm going to put effort into it and show them that I suggested times in those bullets. And I'm going to provide both options because I would prefer to use the calendar link because I'm going to have my assistant help me find a time, right? But also, some people's egos also, they want to be the person that suggests days and times too. So I need to cater to all 3 of those. Exec Vision is a company that did a bunch of studies and they looked at how people asked for meetings, and they found that it was about a third in terms of a prospect's preferences. So you don't know what they prefer. So you want all 3 methods you want to use.
I have to tell you, I'm feeling very good about myself right now because I had somebody reach out to me to come do a half-day program with them in upstate New York in August. And he said, we'd like to meet with you via Zoom. And I wrote back and did exactly what you suggested. Look, here's my Calendly link if that's easiest for you. If not, here are 3 times next week that work for me. And if those don't work, just let me know what works for you, whatever's best. I'll find a way to accommodate your calendar, making it easy for them. It's the same thing in all of selling. Make it easy for people to do business with you. Make it easy for them to say yes. Make it easy for them to say no. But if people have to do too much work, they're not gonna. There's too much competition out there. Let's find somebody easier to work with. So just make it easy. You also recently wrote about a word that I hate with a passion, the word pitch. In fact, I constantly tell salespeople, get that word out of your vocabulary. That's such, I've been selling for almost 50 years and we used to pitch people, but it doesn't work anymore. So you say we should drop the pitch and replace it with a priority drop. What is a priority drop if you haven't already discussed it with us, and how do we use that when we're prospecting?
Yeah. So this is one of those just non-negotiable habits. If you want to be good at outbound and selling, this is one of those non-negotiable habits, is that any urge that I get to pitch something, I'm going to instead talk in my customer voice. I got this from the folks at Zoom Info. They are just relentless about this. So a priority drop is in the beginning of a cold call. What most cold calls sound like is this. Hey, is this Jeff? Yeah, Jeff. Hey, Jeff. Yeah, that's Jason with Blissful Prospecting. Look, I was giving you a call because I think that we could really help you out, and we offer sales training, and we do it for companies like X, Y, and Z. And I wanted to know, do you have some time that we could set aside tomorrow to unpack a little bit? Just like nothing in it for the prospect, all me, like my ask. Now, what I want to do instead is a couple things. So instead of just going straight to it, I'm going to do a permission-based opener. So I'm going to get the prospect to opt in. Hey, Jeff, I know I'm probably catching you in the middle of something, but you got a minute for me to tell you why I'm calling? And you can let me know if you want to keep chatting. Cool. Now, here's where the priority drop comes in. So I'm going to speak through the lens of my customer. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm talking to a lot of VPs of support right now, especially in telecom, and they're telling me that there's really a big focus around one of two things. One is around agent attrition. So it's just one of those environments right now where people are, moving from one shop to another just to make 50 cents, maybe $1 more on the hour. And it's all about how do we engage these folks and retain them? And then two, reducing cost to serve. So how do we reduce the number of calls coming into the call center so that we can serve more customers, serve them faster, and not burn out our agents? Are either of those two something that resonates with you, or am I way off here? So I didn't talk about my thing at all, but I kind of did though, right? Those are the two things that I can help you with. You don't need to know how. If you want to know how, you'll ask me. But you know what? Most executives actually don't care how you solve problems. They don't. That's someone else's job. It's someone else's job to use the tool that you're going to sell, right? So they speak in terms of outcomes and problems and higher level things. So what I did just there is an example of me using my customer voice. I said, people that I talk to like you want to accomplish these things, and they keep running into this. Do you resonate with that at all? I'm also demonstrating business acumen as well. So important. LinkedIn did a state of sales 2020. They surveyed buyers. 88% of them said that they would only purchase a product or service in a B2B buying environment if they felt like the salesperson was a trusted peer. And they said trusted advisor. So the biggest thing you have working against you in a cold call is that most of the people that cold call your prospects, they're not trusted advisors. They're telemarketers. So I have to cut through the clutter. And the best way to do that is demonstrate my business acumen. Demonstrate that I talk to a lot of people exactly like you. I actually know like what your peers are doing more than you do. Now, I'm not saying that, but that's the attitude that I'm coming in with. I talk to way more people like you than you do. One last little thing on this, just to illustrate that point. I was working with a client that sells into K through 12 school districts, and they're calling on principals. And they're like, oh God, these principals are so busy. I was like, do you not understand that? I asked everyone, I was like, how many principals have you guys talked to this year on the sales team? 90. I was like, do you think your prospect, the principal, has talked to 90 other principals this year? No, maybe one other principal. And it's probably at the same school district. So they have no idea what other principals are doing to tackle these challenges. Don't you think they want to know? Yeah, hell yeah, they want to know. Everyone wants to know that stuff. That's the value. That is the insight. When people say value, you got to sell value or whatever, that is value. No one ever talks about what value actually is. It's just a buzzword people in our line of work, Jeff, like to throw around. I always thought, like, what is value? You know what I mean? Value is just simply sharing what a peer of theirs is doing to tackle a common problem. That's it. That's all value is. It's a short customer story and insight.
Yeah, and that trusted advisor thing is so crucial. It's why I train salespeople to never start a meeting with, thank you so much for your time today. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you've immediately lowered yourself and raised and look, years ago, we were all taught the customer's always right, bow down to the almighty customer, but that's not true. First of all, the customer's not always right. They are always the customer, but they're not always right. And if somebody's going to do business with you, that means they've got to trust you. Nobody hands over their money to you for whatever your product or service is unless they trust you. And if you're starting out by thank you, almighty customer, for your valuable time, you've lowered yourself and raised them. Who's going to hire you or me, Jason, in order to help them increase sales at their company, get them more appointments or shorten their sales cycle or whatever they're trying to do, unless they believe and trust that we can do what we say we're going to do? And that's never the way to start out. And I also have to tell you, I think you might have been the first person to expose me to permission-based marketing, but I love it beyond belief. And the funny thing is, when I teach prospecting these days, I teach them that first method, what you're calling the pitch method. I call them the slap them in the face method, as well as permission-based. Inevitably, every audience loves slap them in the face. And I keep telling them, I understand why. I understand the appeal, because here's what I can do for you, except it's just not what's working as well. Certainly not as well as it used to. And the permission based, again, I say you're acknowledging the obvious. The person that you're calling can hang up on you. They can be rude. They can do whatever they want. And by using permission, you have just 30 seconds, and I'll explain. And if you want to continue the conversation, we can. You're acknowledging what's already so. They can hang up on you. They cannot listen. So you're kind of giving them the power that they already have, which is flattering. And my experience has been with most of the people that I've trained is when they try this, they go, it really does work well. And most of the people, when I say, can we continue speaking? They go, yeah, absolutely. This is good. As long as they've got something valuable to say. So I love that beyond belief. Wow. I could talk to you all day when we've only got about 15 minutes left. So what are some of the ways to increase a person's sales confidence? We need to be confident when we're selling. And I know you've got some ideas about that.
Yeah. Confidence is one of those things where, again, there are a lot of people like, oh, you just need to be more confident. Like, yeah, dude, if it was that easy and I could just hit a button and be more confident, I would do it. You know what I mean? That's what I was just always thinking after people would talk about stuff like this. So I think there's a couple things that you can think about. I think one is the realization that you're not as confident as you need to be. You just aren't. Everyone can be more confident, including me. You can always be more confident. The repercussions of not being confident are, I can't remember who said this, but another sales trainer, maybe older than us, or maybe even potentially dead. Maybe it was Zig Ziglar. Enthusiasm transfers, right? You're selling enthusiasm. Whoever said that, maybe it was Brian Tracy. I can't sell enthusiasm. This confidence is this intangible thing that you and I, Jeff, could both say the same exact things to the same exact prospect. But if one of us doesn't do it in a confident way, and there's just something about a prospect that's like a shark that can smell blood in the water. It's this intangible thing. So in terms of things that you can do, there's a lot of different things you can do. But I think one of them is, am I the type of person that sets goals, says that I'm going to do things, and then actually does it? There's so many people in this world that can't even commit to going to bed at a certain time, or waking up when their alarm rings, or saying, I'm going to work out twice this week and then actually follow through. There's so many people that can't even do that. Let me rephrase that word though. Won't do that because they can do it. So that's one really simple thing that you can do is, what's something that's slightly uncomfortable that you could commit to, keep track of. I use an app called Way of Life. You could probably maybe can or can't really see it there. It's got a bunch of check marks on it, and you put habits in there that you work on, and you just mark it yes or no if you did it. Just something really simple like that. Am I doing the things? Am I creating an identity where I'm doing things and following through with the things that I say that I'm going to do? That's one really big thing. If you treat confidence like a muscle, that's like going to help you get into shape over time. I think the second thing that's super important, that's been most impactful for me at this point in my life, is finding peers and mentors that believe in you. Because the reality of the situation is that if you're in sales, you might have a job right now where your manager's not great, and your sales leadership's not great, and maybe some of your peers that you work with are not great either. You need to proactively. One thing I love about Kobe Bryant is when he passed, Michael Jordan gave that speech about him. He said, one of the things he said, Kobe Bryant bothered me so much when he was a rookie because he would call me up at 3 a.m. I regretted giving him my phone number, is what he said. And what stuck out to me about that was, you could tell Michael Jordan was talking about how much he respected Kobe for his just relentless pursuit of learning and wanting to be the greatest. And I was talking to a rep in one of our programs about this today, and he's like, well, I don't know if I want to ask my boss. She's really busy. It's about stuff he needs help with. I'm like, dude, you got it. Like, no one's going to do this for you, man. You have to relentlessly go after what you need to succeed. So find mentors. You got to be relentless. Who cares about bugging people? If people don't want to talk to you they don't want to help you because they feel like you're bugging them, that's probably not someone that's meant to be in your life then. You know what I mean? They don't care about you. So peers, mentors, find people that believe in you, because you're probably not getting that at your workplace. And a lot of us don't get very much of that in our personal lives either. I would say those are the two really big things. And then the other thing too is practice. So I think practice and preparation, that's one thing I got from my conversation with Henry Shack, who's CEO at ZoomInfo. I interviewed him on my podcast. this dude is just maniacal about preparation. He's like, most of the stuff you've ever seen a video of me on, he's like, I've prepared, I've rehearsed that out loud prior to doing it. This guy is just world-class preparation. And the cool part in sales is it doesn't really take much. We don't need to be a PR firm. We're not giving speeches. But if you set a rule with yourself that I'm never going to go into a sales call without preparing for 15 minutes, take 15 minutes. That's all it takes. It doesn't take that long. 15 minutes. I'm never going to go into a conversation unprepared. I'm going to even practice certain things that I want to talk about. And lastly, with your prospecting, I literally will sit with reps that are struggling with that permission-based opener, and I can tell they just haven't done it enough. I'm like, this is new to you. You haven't done it enough. You're trying to run and you don't even know how to walk, dude. I'll sit with them and we'll just go, hey, this is Jason with Blissful Prospecting. I know I probably caught you in the middle of something, but you got a minute for me to tell you why I'm calling? You can let me know if you want to keep chatting. All right, that was good, Jason. Go again. All right, hey, this, it's just like over and over and over and over, like literally 50 times in a row. And that's all it took. It took 10 minutes, 50 times in a row real quick. And they're like, wow. And that probably actually took more like 15 or 20 minutes. But they're like, wow. Like they sound like a completely different human being because they're more confident now. They're not stumbling over their words. Practice. You need to treat sales like it's a sport. A professional athlete would never skip a workout. That's not what professional athletes do. They don't skip workouts. They don't skip stretching. They do all of those things. We're in a profession that rewards us for being really skilled and competent. We get more money. This is like the only job in the world outside of doing what we do, running a business, where you get comped based on your results. So why wouldn't I want to get more out of what I'm doing? It just takes practice.
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes a day really is all it takes. Just a little bit of intentional practice.
Yeah.
It'll do wonders for your confidence.
Yep. There's an old saying, that amateurs wing it and professionals plan, and they practice. And it's constantly stunning to me how most salespeople, they don't read a book, they don't go to a seminar, they don't watch a video, they don't do anything unless their company forces them to do it. Since the last time we spoke, and I guess it must have been about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started doing stand-up comedy a year ago.
Yeah.
Constant practice. I mean, I never go up on like I got invited yesterday to probably go up tomorrow night for 5 minutes. Now I've got 15, 20 minutes of material I could do. You can bet tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to spend an hour walking on the beach, just rehearsing that tight 5 minutes in case they call me up. I actually bought a ticket to be in the audience, and the promoter who I know said, why'd you pay for a ticket? I would have comped you. I said, no, man, it's a business. I can afford the $20. He goes, well, I'm probably going to put you up. Well, I'm going to practice tomorrow because I don't want to get up there and look like an idiot. Now, there's no money on the line for me, but professional salespeople need to understand that every single time it's your money on the line. If you're not willing to invest the time to learn and practice, that's insane. And I'm getting away from your true area of expertise, but you're very well-rounded. You also had some excellent advice about world-class professionals and being selfish with their time. Could you share that? What have you seen?
Yeah. So I saw Darren Hardy. He gave a webinar. This was 2012 maybe is when I saw it. It was him and Jeffrey Gitomer. Was giving a webinar. He said, Darren Hardy said, what's really surprising about all because he used to, I don't know, I think he still might run Success Magazine. So he's got an interview of, Steve Jobs back in the day and all these other folks. He's like, what I've learned from these folks is their success is less about what they say yes to and more about what they say no to. And something just clicked with me right there. I was like, oh, dang. Because it's really easy to be in consumption mode and to look for all the things that you need to do. And these guys are just like, these men and women are so good at pushing out the stuff that doesn't matter. And they're relentless with their time. You always hear time is finite. It's the most important resource. And, I think a lot of people say that, but I don't think that their actions would reflect that that is something that is actually a value of theirs. And I had a really just reality check with this a couple of years ago where I'm like, dude, I'm talking to people like peers of ours that they don't take it as seriously as I do. I got to spend less time with those people. And it's nothing against them as human beings. It's just that the level that I want to go, they just don't take it as seriously. I'm not going to, if I really, Jim Rohn's quote, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I've been saying that, Jeff, for so long, but I'd never lived it, And I think that's really big, is being relentless with your time, cutting out negativity. And a really hard thing that you might have to do is some of that might be your family. It might be people like your mom or your dad or your siblings or your aunts or your uncles, all this other stuff. You might need to limit the amount of time that you spend with certain people in your life. And it sucks. And it's really hard to have those conversations, but you got to think about, what do I really want in this life? And if being really good at my career is one of those things, how do I say no to more things? It's people, honestly, that are going to hold you back the most in life. It's the people that you spend time with. So think about how you could say no to more of those things and be more relentless about how you spend your time. Because free time, Jocko talks about discipline equals freedom. God, it's just like he couldn't have summed it up any better than that. The more disciplined you can be about stuff like this, the more your free time can just be so open and structured, and you can go take your pug on a walk on the beach like Jeff does. I don't have Facebook anymore, Jeff, so I don't see your Facebook updates anymore, but that was always made my day. The
I,
pug post.
I still do them. I love my pug. He's laying behind me right now with his bark collar on, so he doesn't interrupt us. But I'm with you 1,000,000%. I always tell my coaching clients, you've got, and every training that I do, you've got to protect your time like a mother lion protects her cubs, because
Yeah.
time is the one thing you cannot get back. If you don't have money, you can always make more money. If you
Yeah.
get sick, usually you can almost always regain your health if you try hard enough and know the right things to do. But this hour that we've just invested, we'll never get that back. If it wasn't profitable to you and me, and hopefully to the audience, it was a complete loss. And you
Yeah.
do have to get good at saying no. And I'm going to assume that, like me, you're a people pleaser. I want everybody to be happy, but I can't make everybody happy. And you have to know where are your commitments in life. Mine, I'm committed to providing the best possible opportunity in life for my 3 children. And that means sometimes I've got to say no to other stuff. Like there's stuff
Yeah.
I could be doing after we end this call in 5 minutes. But the thing I'm going to do is WALK, the DOG, and I spelled that because otherwise he would have jumped up. Then I'm getting in my car and going and picking up my youngest daughter because we're going to see a Broadway show. You got to have your priorities straight. You got to know what to do and when, and be relentless about it.
Yep.
Selfish, okay, if that's what you want to call it, that's fine, but you got to protect your time. And by the way, I love Darren Hardy. I don't think he's running Success Magazine anymore because he's busy with his business. But for those of you who don't know him, just look him up, Darren Hardy, Hardy. He has a morning minute that he sends out for free. Really great stuff. We've only got 2 or 3 minutes left. Any final thoughts, Jason, that you'd like to share with the audience?
I think that with outbound, it's the best reps know how to self-source pipeline. They know. So if you're watching this and you're working at a company that has SDRs and BDRs and appointment setters and you get inbound, the very best reps know how to self-source. And they spend 10%. I call it the 10% rule. They spend 10% of their time filling the top of their funnel, doing prospecting. So 10% of your time is about an hour a day for most people. That's it. If you just committed an hour every single day, Monday through Friday, to prospect, you would always crush your quota. You just will. You will. So that's all it takes. It's the compound effect, as Darren Hardy would talk about, right? It's the compound effect of that hour compounding over time. That's really where it's at. So it's the ongoing commitment to make it a part of your sales lifestyle. It needs to become a sales habit. None of this stuff works. None of the gimmicks, tricks, the videos, or whatever. None of that stuff works unless you commit to it.
Yeah, I love that word. And I use it constantly with my coaching clients. I don't care what you want. I don't care what you hope for. I don't care what your dreams are, your wishes. As a human, I care about all that. But as a coach, I only care about one thing. What are you committed to? Because that's the only thing that's going to make you take action. And I also love what you just said. So many reps I speak to think, I don't have a day to spend prospecting. If you're doing it right, you probably don't need more than 30 to 60 minutes a day if you do it A, effectively, and B, consistently. That's where I see so many reps fall down. They're inconsistent with their prospecting, and you got to have that full pipeline. Jason, you're brilliant at what you do. I really appreciate this time. How can people reach you if they're interested in working with you or your company?
Yeah, blissfulprospecting.com is the best place. I got a podcast as well, Blissful Prospecting Podcast. On our website, we have a bunch of free content. If that's what you're looking for, we have programs for reps and programs for companies as well. So if you're wanting some help implementing some of this style of prospecting and resonated one way or another with what I said today, check out blissfulprospecting.com. That's the hub for everything.
By the way, I haven't looked at your website in quite a while, but I remember the last time I did, there was just a ton of great information about you because you mentioned an app you're using, apps and all kinds of tools. So go to Jason's website, blissfulprospecting.com. Jason Bay, thank you so much. As always, you are my guru when it comes to prospecting. And I'll end as I always do. Please, guys, remember, sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Thank you, Jason. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.